listening to Shop Talk with your host, Kevin Tates. Brought to you by Eastwood Tools. Everything you need to do the job right.
I always like to hear about entrepreneurs and people that are creating trends instead of following them. To see somebody that forges ahead gives me the courage to maybe try something a little bit out of the box myself. Such is the case with Eric the Car Guy. Really interesting guy and humble and at the same time very confident. Eric talks about how he got his start doing what he's doing, being one of the foremost, impromptu experts on the internet with how-to videos and selflessly sharing his experience as a certified auto mechanic with anybody who cares to watch for free. And on top of that, he's figured out how to carve out a living doing that very thing. It's pretty inspiring. So take a listen as Eric the Car Guy and I talk about the digital world, the digital revolution, and good old-fashioned wrenching. Check it out. Hey guys, you're listening to Shop Talk. I'm your host, Kevin Tates, and today we have got an interesting cat on the line. We're talking with Eric the Car Guy. And if you haven't heard of Eric the Car Guy, I don't know what rock you're living underneath, but you obviously haven't been to YouTube. He's quite well followed with his YouTube videos that are all how-to videos teaching you the ins and outs of automotive mechanics. Eric, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing awesome, Kevin. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's the week after Memorial Day. We survived that, and other than my face swelling up like a Shar-Pei dog for some weird reason, I'm doing good.
Been eating shellfish or something you should have been eating? Oh.
I don't know, man. It was just odd. I woke up Saturday morning and I was puffy. But I'm working on some cool stuff at my shop. How about you?
I am too. I actually have a few projects going on right now, one of which is my 79 Fairmont.
Well, let's get right into that. I was telling you before, I was up at one of the Carlisle shows, which I love the Carlisle, Pennsylvania car shows. There's just so much stuff to see. It's like SEMA on the grass. And there was this great car. I think it was in about '05. It was a Ford Fairmont two-door, and it had I think it was an 86. It was the double headlight. It was an 86 Fox Mustang front end. Everything lined up perfectly. Style lines on the fenders to the door. So what people don't really know, and you know this well, is that the Fairmont is actually a Fox body platform, right?
It is the first Fox body, in my understanding.
And all of the things that go along with that, including the cow shake that these cars are somewhat known for going over railroad tracks, but all the high-performance stuff and the hype of the Mustang, the Bill Shank design of the 87 GT was revolutionary and saved that car. And I'm a big fan of these cars, and obviously you are too. But what brought you to morph these two names or badges together?
Well, there are a lot of Mustangs out there. There are a lot of Camaros out there. There are a lot of cars that are considered quote-unquote performance cars out there. I didn't want to be just another one of those guys, and I haven't been that. So knowing that the Fairmont has access to everything Mustangs have to offer, I wanted to go that route, and I wanted to do something that was more of a sleeper. I didn't want it to necessarily stand out because, let's face it, police are car guys. A lot of them are, and they'll pick you out of a crowd pretty quickly. So, so if you're driving something that looks like Grandpa's car, I think you're less likely to attract attention than you would if, say, you were driving a nice Mustang or Camaro.
Good strategy. One question. Is the wheelbase the same on the Fairmont and the Mustang?
I believe it is. I believe it's all bolt-on stuff.
So all the underpinnings, rear axles, drive shafts, transmissions, all of that stuff will interchange, right?
Yes, I believe for me, I believe it's 79 through 93.
Very cool. Because as you know, the old Cougars were different than the Mustangs, even in the same year model. The Mercury division was a standalone division, and although they did share a lot of the components, there was track width differences and wheelbase differences. So you couldn't really do a Cougar Mustang back in the late 60s. But I think maybe with the way mass-produced vehicles have changed over the years, maybe they're cross-promoting platforms. I heard a rumor that the brand new Mustang is built on the same platform as the Fusion. So I'm not sure about that, but they're at least certainly on the same assembly line. But so I think it's a little easier maybe to do things like that than it was 20 or 30 years ago today.
Well, I think it's cheaper to manufacture. In fact, I just shot a video last week about this very thing, about the modularization of vehicles, and one of the main reasons I believe they do it is to save on costs. So if you've got 10 vehicles that use the same platform, let's say GM, it's a lot cheaper just to throw a different skin on the outside of it and a different interior trim level, and you got yourself a whole new car. So,
yeah, and honestly, I don't think that scabs into the integrity of the vehicles. I think more and more people these days are looking at cars like appliances more than a statement of their lifestyle. What would you say to that?
I would agree with that 100%. It's not the same. It's not the same as it was. Well, I hate to date myself here. Growing up when I was younger, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot to do. There wasn't an internet. There wasn't all this other stuff. So, and I lived in a small town. We worked on our cars and pretty much, compared notes that way, as opposed to, how fast is your processor and how much RAM do you have?
Yeah, exactly. And, not hacking on either world, I grew up in the same way. That's how we socialize. Yeah. I come from a background of car people and grew up around cars, and my dad's a car guy, and so on and so on and so on. And that was our little community, at least amongst us gearhead dudes anyways. And that's how we, like I said, is how we socialize. So it sounds like you and I have some other common ground, too.
Indeed.
Well, listen, obviously you're the car guy. You're the mechanic. What is your background as a professional wrench turner?
Back in 1996, I graduated from Rosedale Technical Institute in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm not afraid to say at the top of my class. I actually just went back there recently to do a speech at graduation. I got to brag about that then also.
Good for you, man. That's good.
Yeah, thank you. But I was highly motivated to be the best technician I could be for a couple of reasons. One, I actually started out in art school and couldn't really find a good paying job with that. And at the time, I had a young son and I was trying to, pay support and do all those types of things. And I couldn't make it happen with anything in the art world. So I was very motivated to go to school. I found out that I could go to an 18-month program, get out, and possibly get a job as an automotive technician, which was something that I also had an interest in because, oddly enough, I found myself fixing people's cars for pizza and beer to supplement my income while I was going to school. So it seemed like a logical progression in a way. After that, I worked at an independent shop in Pittsburgh for a little while. In fact, that was one of my favorite jobs. I kind of wish I'd never left it. But we worked on everything, both foreign and domestic, plus the owner also went to the same school that I went to. And it was a small shop, so it was just a couple of guys. We all got along. I learned a great deal from all of them. And then I ended up moving to Cincinnati. And when I got there, I went around to just drop my resume off. They've got streets where there's lots of car dealerships. I walked into every one and just left my resume. And by the time I got home, there were several different callbacks from a lot of these places, and I was just amazed, coming from somebody who was, I worked at Boston Market for a while putting chickens on spits, and I was covered in marinade, and I was smelled, and to go from that to being somebody that was quote-unquote in demand was quite a thing. So I ended up working at an Acura dealership for, I think it was about 4 years, and then I left there and went to an independent import shop for another 4 years, or another 2 years. And then I came back for another 2.5 years to the dealership, mainly because of money. Honestly, dealerships, you can make lots of money at dealerships. But through some strange set of circumstances, I ended up losing my job there. And, at the time, I was kind of on the fence. I was maybe a little jaded about the automotive industry. I wasn't really that happy with it. As I said, I did what I could to be the best technician I could be, but being a flat rate technician working on Hondas got a little repetitive, and things started to change. So I wanted something new.
Yeah.
So I developed an interest in video production. So on the weekends, I started my own video production company. I started doing things like weddings and events and corporate work and that type of thing. And I really developed an interest in it. It helped, rekindle my interest in going to work. So during that time after I lost my job, I bounced around to a couple of automotive jobs, but they were very short-lived because I just got to a point where I said, you know what, I just want to do video production. Well, this was 2008. And at that time, trying to start a business wasn't working out too well. So I had been watching YouTube, and I saw this guy on YouTube, David's Farm. Some people might know him. And he was doing a video about how he was holding up a check that he got from YouTube for $7,000 for a month worth of videos. I'm thinking, you know what, that might be something I might want to try because I could certainly use that.
Well, when you hear that at first, that you can actually make money, it's one thing to be benevolent and throw out good information there, which you do. But when you understand that you can play the game, and heck, music careers are made from YouTube. Look at Justin Bieber. There's lots of people that have capitalized on the mass appeal of that particular video information site. So well done, and kudos to you, man, for recognizing that and still maintaining your integrity of giving good information essentially for free.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I worked really hard at it because, in a way, I saw a need for it because what David's Farm was doing was just kind of fun videos. Me, I thought, well, maybe I could take this to the next level and actually do step-by-step repair videos because I did have that video production experience. And this was fairly early on. This was about 5 years ago or so or something like that. And there weren't a whole lot of, like, how-to channels that were really out there at that time. So I think I was able to capitalize on the market and get, you know, sort of out front, so to speak, at that early onset, and since then I've just done what I can to help maintain that and help give the audience what it is they're looking for.
Well, you touched on something a little bit ago, and I kind of wanted to say my concept of it out loud. When you were talking about yourself, as it was humbling for you to recognize that you are somebody that was all of a sudden in demand just by tossing out a few resumes. Here's what I want to say to people that are listening maybe to Shop Talk and to Eric the Car Guy, that want to have a career in this industry, Wildtech graduates, UTI graduates, whatever, MMI, doesn't matter. Somebody that's taken the time and invested into their education. When you're doing an interview, and I think you'll agree with me, Eric, but when you're doing an interview, when you're handing out a resume, it's an intangible thing that across the desk somebody is going to understand your passion. They're going to feel your integrity in a way that it can't be described. And to me, that is, you have to bring it. You have to, present yourself in a way to where people understand that you're very serious about it, and obviously you've done that, and that takes somebody that truly loves what they do. You seem to have not only an in-depth understanding of all things automotive and the workings of the mechanical aspects of a vehicle, but you love it, don't you?
I love what I do now. Yes, absolutely.
Well, I don't know, and just if anybody takes that to heart, if you're applying for a job, you just have to absorb yourself into it and be the best technician you can. My co-host on the truck show, Ryan Shand, he never did any kind of a performance career. He was not even in a high school play. He's self-described as being somewhat introverted during school. He's a UTI graduated. He was recruited by BMW and went through, there was their specific training school, and then was placed at a BMW dealership and was very happy doing that. And great technician, one of the best diagnostic technicians I've ever been in the same room with, and a brilliant guy. I love him like a brother. He and I worked together for almost 9 years on the truck show. And, he just walked into the presentation thing and being able to analogize and break things down to the point to where he could teach and he could make people understand through the TV show in small chunks of time. He just walked right into that. And it's because of his understanding and his love of the whole process of it and diagnostics and the whole thing that he was able to transfer that along. And to say that you need to have a degree in some sort of a performance field, I'm not sure that you do. There's lots of guys like you and lots of guys like me that end up on these TV shows or in a public forum that don't have any kind of a background. So again, you can combine your vocation and a passion and really kind of, land on your feet with it.
That's the best way to go, in my opinion. Like I said, I really enjoy what I do now, which is more akin to more of what you described there, is breaking things down and presenting them to people. I just found an affinity for that. It's as far as auto repair and going into interviews and putting yourself out there, I get what you're saying, and that's sometimes difficult, I find, for people that are into this profession, because a lot of them are rather introverted, because in some ways they might get along with machines better than they do people, but it is definitely a rewarding career, and it's definitely something that is different every day, and it will challenge you in unique and wonderful ways.
Yeah, well said.
On some days, but if you love it and you enjoy what you do, they say you never work a day in your life, and I try to live by that personally.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, let's talk for a second about Eastwood. Obviously, there's common ground with Eastwood. You've tried some of the Eastwood tools. I watched your video recently on their manual lever style flare tool with now with a 37-degree head for AN style fittings. The first time I tried that, I was building a car. It was my first ever car that I was building for the SEMA show. It was my little '66 Mustang Coupe with the 04 Cobra drivetrain. And we were in a wicked thrash, and we had to make another crossover brake line. And Nick and the guys had sent me one of these brake flare kits. In less than a minute, I had made the double flare line that I needed to cross over top of the rear axle, and it was fantastic because I've used the pneumatic ones, and I've split stainless, I've split fuel lines and things like that just because. I don't know, man. What I'm trying to say is that's one of the greatest tools that I've ever used in the shop, and you seem to gravitate to it as well. Do you like some of the Eastwood equipment, I guess?
I more than like that tool. That tool it does what it needs to do. I mean, you ask it to give you a double flare, it gives you a perfect double flare every time. It hasn't let me down. I absolutely love that tool. It's one of the favorite tools I have. And it's just a shame because I want to use it whenever I can, but I don't often find myself flaring lines and things. But whenever I do, I'm definitely looking forward to it.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you is you're all over YouTube. You've got hundreds of thousands of followers, and that's fantastic. Some would think that the next progression for Eric the Car Guy would be to have a television version of Eric the Car Guy. Have you ever thought about that?
I've actually been approached on a couple of different occasions with some ideas that, well, maybe weren't. It's hard to say. What I do on the internet doesn't necessarily translate to television well, and one of the main reasons is because the way I do my show is, say for instance, I'm doing a brake job and I run into a problem. I'm not going to cut that problem out because I think one of the reasons why the viewers like the videos that I do is because I don't cut those things out, because they're in the real world. They're out in their driveway, their garage, whatever, trying to get the job done, and they may run into a similar problem. So for me, I let the camera roll, and I follow that through in a progression. Now, television fitting into like a 22 or a 44-minute format doesn't always work out that way. So the fact that just the things that I do have varying lengths, there just really hasn't been something that's come along up to this point that seems to translate well from what I already do into something like that. And ultimately what I like to do is I like to help people when I can. So if I can help them get a better understanding of doing that brake job and why I'm doing certain things and making those recommendations, then that's what I'm there to do. But as far as television, that'd be great. I mean, I know that I could probably grow even bigger through that. But if it's not going to be something that benefits the audience and it's just going to be Eric the Car Guy on TV, I don't really see much point.
Having said that, you've touched on a very, very important point. One it's a source of angst to me. One of the biggest criticisms that we have doing our how-to TV shows is you guys don't show how you solve problems. You show a problem and a solution, but you don't show when, if you drop the socket in between the door brace and the door skin, how do you get it out? Those kinds of things, the real world issues. And the truth is, out of a 30-minute TV show, we have about 18 minutes to tell a 40-hour story.
Right.
And you end up, in the television industry, it's called leaving it on the floor. And you end up with all of this wonderful stuff. This, when the cameras are rolling, because the cameras are always rolling, you end up with these solutions to problems and homemade fixes. And you gotta, weld this slice a screwdriver in half and weld it at a right angle to get into this weird fastener. But you can't do that if you've got a tool sponsor. So it's, and I'm not gonna whine and moan about it, but it's just the nature of the beast.
Right.
So it's kind of a necessary evil of it, and you're exactly right. And it's very frustrating not to tell the whole story. And that's the reason that my DVDs are long form. I've got a DVD on panel replacements that's more than 2 hours long. And that would never be a TV show. But you got to show that stuff. And even then, I trim for pace. I don't trim for content, but I trim for pace, and I do edits, and I do some blending, and you speed the film up a little bit to show, that I did in fact block the whole roof skin. When it took 3 hours, I'm not going to have a 3-hour section on my video of blocking a roof skin. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm sorry to babble on about this because it's actually we're supposed to be talking about you, but the difference in what you do and the difference in the television shows, I'm not going to say it's integrity, but it's maybe a more complete source of information. And I think that's why people have responded so well to what you're doing.
And I've done my best to try to cater to that, knowing that. I mean, as a person, before I actually ever went to school, before I became a professional mechanic and everything, I was in the same boat. I was in the same place to where I didn't necessarily have that understanding. I had some tools, I had some mechanical ability, but I didn't necessarily have all the understanding that I needed to get through a job like maybe a head gasket or something like that. So over time, maybe I asked the guy at the parts store, I'd go to the library, maybe try to find a book on it, or, some Chilton manuals or things like that. And it still didn't have all the pieces to the puzzle. So in a way, I'm trying to answer my own questions, which seem to be questions that a lot of people are asking in my videos with those things, like what happened, and that usually ends up in the cutting room floor on a television show. But like I said, I try to leave those things in because there's something to be learned there. There's something to be learned about getting yourself out of a jam. When you're doing the routine job that you've done 100 times before, there's something to that. So I like to leave that in. I think it's important.
I think you're exactly right. Let's change gears right now. No pun intended. Let's talk about production. Obviously, it's a visual medium that we're talking about and we're dealing with. You do have a background, which is interesting to hear that you do have a background in as being a professional videographer. A wedding videographer is no joke, man. You got a one-time shot of capturing somebody's moment in time that's supposed to be the happiest day of their life, and you got to treat that stuff seriously. So you understand, coming from that perspective, on how important it is for shot composition and things like that. So somebody that's trying to do videos online, let's face it, we're not the only guys that are doing this stuff. There's going to be guys coming up around us, and in my opinion, it's more important to share this stuff than it is to hold it in close and hold it tight, which is the reason that I wanted to do Pageducation in the first place, is to share some of the skills that I had picked up because of the fact that people were unwilling to share them with me at some point. So I wanted to change that paradigm, whether it's in a small way or a big way, doesn't matter. Let's talk about production. Let's talk about shot composition. How much, let me ask you the money question. What is it going to take for somebody to do a decent online video and give something that's presentable to where you can hear the audio and you can see good video? What's an entry level with something like that?
I actually started out with consumer cameras, and I still use them, mainly because if something happens, I don't have a $5,000 camera that I just destroyed. I don't necessarily have that in my budget. So, I mean, the cameras that I had were the Sony HDR SR11s, which unfortunately they do not make anymore, and their replacements that they've come out with are a shadow of what they used to be. But it was a good all-around camera. It was just a consumer camera that I could get into tight spaces. It was smaller. They're even smaller now. I mean, that camera was new, I think, in 2005, 2006. So, it's really that. It's also the editing software, but it's lighting. But I've been lighting with shop lights for the most part, so it's not difficult. So, if you really wanted to do this and you were serious, the equipment, I don't think, is where you're going to get most of your return. I think you're going to get most of your return out of the content more than anything, because I've seen things that, may not necessarily were the best productions, but they had good information and they did well as far as views went. So really, you need to know what people want to watch and think about answering those questions that people might be asking. As far as production level, light it, make sure it's lit. And as far as editing, you edit it as if you're think of time as the most important commodity that your viewer has, and try to save them as much time as possible and give them just the information that they need. I mean, some people could say my videos are long, but I think you brought this up a little bit earlier, that you edit for pace, and I do the same thing. I try to make it so the information is there, but I'm trying not to be too wordy. I'm trying not to get too involved, and that's the pitfalls you get into. And I've cut out entire segments of videos to 10 minutes just to get them to conform to the actual subject matter. So editing is big, I think, also. So editing, lighting, and shot composition also helps a great deal.
What's your thought on magazines as opposed to digital video? Have you got an opinion?
Well, I'm going to just put a pin in that for a second, because I actually wanted to comment on the GoPros real quick. I actually have 2 GoPros that I've shot with, and I have shot POV video with them. And I can honestly say I have a love-hate relationship with them, mainly because technically sometimes they aren't all there. Other times they are, and they do what they do very well. But as far as audio, don't buy yourself a GoPro camera and use it for audio. And they do make different cases with the backs cut out that actually make better audio. But if you're going to use GoPro cameras, don't intend on using that audio if that's what you're going to do. But they do make for some really interesting shots. In fact, the video that I did where I introduced the Fairmont, I used GoPros extensively in that, which worked. And recently my drag racing video also. So they can work. Now, as far as print media versus digital media, I'm going to say that I don't think print media is going to be around much longer. I think a lot of it's going to move towards a digital thing. As far as archiving, well, you can do that digitally also, but it is nice to have a magazine in your hands. Going back to earlier in our conversation, we talked about the culture we grew up in, that type of thing, where we would, get together with our friends and talk about the things that we did to our cars and that type of thing. Well, back then I was waiting for, like Carcraft magazine to show up in my mailbox. I couldn't wait for it to show up, and that's what I did. I didn't even have a TV at that time. I would just sit and read Carcraft and all that kind of stuff. So I absolutely loved it then. I still have some of those around now, but after lugging them around after a few moves, it's kind of like,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
As cool as it is to have that print in my hand, I think I've more adopted the digital universe in the sense that it's so much easier to carry a hard drive than it is a stack of books.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the only concern that I have over that is that, a photograph can be saved for 100 years, but who knows what kind of a format that we're going to be carrying forth in 100 years. And it's a wonderful thing, but it's kind of a scary thing, too. And my hope is that with everything that's going digital, including videos that you and I make, and a host of other people, my hope is that there will be retention and an importance placed on what has preceded us. I hope that doesn't sound too nostalgic, but I don't want to lose a generation or two generations worth of great information and documentation of what it is that we do in order to facilitate a more efficient broadcast medium.
Well, I don't necessarily think that's going to happen because you can still archive that media. And a lot of people are. I doubt it's going to get thrown away. There was way too much work put into it, and it still has value, of course. But it's as far as the passage of time and progress, well, it's always going to happen, whether we're here or not to witness it.
This is cool stuff, man. I really dig the fact that you're into you're a gearhead, and we're talking about the future of online content. It's really neat talking to you, man.
Well, thank you very much. Well, in a way, that's pretty much what my business is.
So you don't want to do a TV show? Do you still actually work on cars?
I would do a TV show if it was the right TV show. Just to clarify.
10-4. I understand. Thank you for clarifying that for me, because I think you'd be great at it. You're very presentable on, the way you do your videos. You're very concise with your information. I think the format would suit you. The problem with TV is that it's advertiser-driven. And as you know, with the on-demand style formatting, the traditional television commercial has died. It's still on the air, but people are fast-forwarding through them. So what's happening now in television is that integration is now the form of advertisement. You see this on some of the live shows, the football games, the American Idols, things like that, where the big competitors are now integrating the product into the actual content. And to me, I don't know, man. I'm not sure that I appreciate that a whole lot. So I don't even really know where I was going with that, but television in the format that it's in, I think more and more content is going to be eclipsed by the need to have it monetized, and that's where it's really fresh to see what you do on the web, because it's not like that. The viewer doesn't have to buy it, and it's not forced down his throat. Typically, there is a click ad. We're in a click ad world. Let's face it, but it's not the same. What's your thought on that?
Well, let's put it this way. If it's a good product and I can believe in it, I don't mind selling it. And I think that there are opportunities, given the context, that those things can be worked into videos to present to people as a solution to a particular problem. But if I find myself, doing a video about doing a brake job on something and they want me to integrate Tampax or something like that into I don't think that's necessarily going to work. So I would have an issue with that. But if it was something that was a benefit to the viewer, then I could go that way. So it's a really thin knife edge that I walk, because on one hand, I want to provide useful information to the viewers, and that's the mandate. On the other hand, I still have to make a living and feed my kids. So, you have to walk a fine line, because on some level you have to, if you're going to live the public life or work the public job such as what we're doing, you have to deal with advertising no matter what. I mean, that's just part of the whole, process. It's a scheme of things. So
yeah.
I have like hundreds of thousands of bosses, I call them. Those are the people that subscribe and watch my videos, and I answer to them. Ultimately, but at the same time, I also answer to the people that say, "Hey, Eric, if you advertise this product for us, we'll give you whatever." And that hasn't happened yet, but should something like that happen, it's certainly worth consideration. But it's very difficult as a content creator on YouTube, as a quote unquote independent person. With a television production, you've got producers, you've got crews, you've got all kinds of people that are telling you what to do. But being an independent like I am, it's a little more challenging to know what things to do, what things not to do, so in some ways you have a little more freedom, but the ignorance can sometimes hold you back.
Yeah, but isn't it cool to be kind of paving the way for something? I mean, isn't it exciting to be part of a new format?
Absolutely. I flip and love what I do. I really do.
Yeah. Well, it comes across, man. What is next for Eric the Car Guy?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question. I do have some long-term plans that I'm not necessarily prepared to talk about at this time, just because.
Understood. That's fine.
Just because I want to make sure that I can make those things happen. But it's funny, because when I started doing this, I had it in my mind, just get me to 100,000 subscribers, allow me to make a decent living at this, to where this is all I have to do, and I'll be happy for the rest of my life. Well, I got there a couple of years ago. And since then, it's like, you achieve that goal, and then you say to yourself, well, what can I do next? And ultimately what I'd like to do is I'd like to continue in the vein of helping the very people that help put me where I am now. And that's the way I see it. The show is a two-way street. I can make the show all day long, but if nobody's watching, what's the point? But apparently people do like the show. They identify with the show, and I want to continue to do that. But I think beyond that, it's a way of reaching them and offering them opportunities and just information, or just doing what I do better is what I'm looking to do, and maybe helping to bring somebody in a similar situation that I was when I started out, being just flat broke and just needing a career and just needing a way out. If I can help offer that to somebody also based on my success and paving the way, then that's what I'd like to do going forward. I'd like to continue, if I could, I'd be a philanthropist. I would love that. That would be an ideal thing for me, because the way I see it, I have everything I need and I love what I do. So as far as making more money, great, but it's not my focus.
Well, and that's probably why it's coming to you, honestly. I think if we give and do for the right reasons, the rest of it just fills itself in, and that's a philosophy that I subscribe to. And there's a saying, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And I think that directly relates to what you just said. If you approach it with integrity, with the right reasons, then, I don't know, let's get philosophical for a second here. The universe fills in the gaps and provides for us. And I think that is a universal truth, personally.
To some extent, I believe that. But I've also said the phrase, my life is like an exercise in Murphy's Law. And I think anybody that's done auto repair has felt that way at some point in time.
Well, you know what? That's what life is.
Yeah.
You have to roll with the stuff that happens.
Exactly.
And it's just the way you look at it, man. If you fall down in the dirt, well, then you realize that boy, I was lucky I didn't fall in that dog shit. And
it's all about point of view. It's all about a state of mind. And I think once you develop that state of mind that you're going to be successful, or you're going to overcome that repair or whatever obstacle it is that you're dealing with, then you will overcome it. And the more you do that, the more empowered you become, and who knows what you'd be capable of at the end of the day.
Cool. Well, I can't wait to see what's happening next. And like a lot of people that are listening, I'm going to subscribe to Eric the Car Guy. How do we tell people how to do that?
Well, you can subscribe to me on YouTube. You can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter. In addition to that, if you have automotive questions, I would ask that you head over to ericthecarguy.com. There's a bunch of stuff there, including a welcome video to tell you about all the amazing features we have there to help you with automotive issues, should you have them.
So it's just as simple as that. Let's go to Facebook. Let's just look up Eric the Car Guy online, right?
Just hit, if you type in Eric the Car Guy, you will find me.
Well, I always ask people that we talk to on Shop Talk if there's anybody that's been really significant in your trajectory, or anybody that has given of themselves for no other reason than they thought it was the right thing to do. I'm talking about mentors, and I'm talking about people that have influenced your life. Have you got anybody that you want to thank or send a shout-out to?
That's funny. I did a video not too long ago talking about some positive influences in my life, and one of the ones that I kind of it's embarrassing because of what I do to say, but Oprah Winfrey.
No, it's not. She's a very inspirational person. Sorry, but I watch Oprah.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, she started with very little. She started out, and she has built her career around helping people, and I admire people that do things like that. As far as people that are, and then there's other people that along the way, instructors and things that help provide some insight. My dad, another one, he was also a car guy, if you want to call him that. There's, and I'm actually very inspired by my fans. Every once in a while, I'll get an email from one of them that says that I've inspired them to, maybe get into auto repair or, help them get through a repair that they did. And that inspires me. That inspires me to keep doing more. I love hearing how my work affects people in a positive way. So it's kind of a symbiotic thing. I put it out and they turn around and they thank me for it, and I just want to do it more.
Well said. Well, Eric, thank you so much for taking the time with us today on Shop Talk. And, buddy, I can't wait to see what's happening next for you. And in the meantime, I'm working on a 78 Camaro, and we're doing an LS engine swap into it. And I'm going to have some questions.
Awesome. That sounds like fun.
Maybe it's even something we can work together on. What do you think?
Actually, I have a block for what could be an LS1 sitting in my shop that I'm not using, that I was thinking about giving up for the Fairmont project.
Really?
So,
okay, so you're putting the Chevy in a Ford.
No.
Sacrilege.
No. I wouldn't put the Chevy in the Ford. I'd never be forgiven for that. No, I'm actually going to have a video in the not too distant future about what's going in the Ford, but I'd be absolutely thrilled to actually help you with that project in some way.
What a neat platform, and very affordable. So I'm excited about doing this build and kicking it off, and Eastwood is going to help show the whole process. It's going to be something to where after I'm done with the body work, now we got to make it go. So I'll be calling.
That sounds fantastic.
Well, Eric, thanks again for sharing your time. We're listening to Eric the Car Guy. Look him up at ericthecarguy.com. You're listening to Shop Talk. Remember, we're giving away all kinds of stuff online. There was a battery-powered tool set that we gave away. Now, there's a $500 value, folks. Get on the blog. Download us on iTunes. There's all kinds of great stuff happening with the Eastwood Company. And in the meantime, get out there and do the job right. Thanks for listening to Shop Talk. We're brought to you by Eastwood. Special thanks to Eric the Car Guy for taking the time to not only talk with us today, but also being willing to be a part of some stuff that we've got coming up in the future. Eric, I will call you when we do the LS swap. Enough said. In the meantime, please send your questions in or comments to shoptalk@eastwood.com. We want to hear from you guys. And also, keep in mind that the Improve Your Skills giveaway is ongoing. This is something that we want to do. We want to give you free stuff. How's that? Thanks for listening to Shop Talk. I'm Kevin Tates. Remember, get out there and do the job right with Eastwood.